told to the panelists, I want to connect with Switzerland and the Polytechnic School of Lausanne, because Oleg Lavrovsky, who is a panelist working for Apertus Artificial Intelligence, the only, as I know so far, open source artificial intelligence, will connect with us and participate. So if someone can help me here with your infrastructure, I would be. Hi, Oleg. Perfect. So, far away.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear us?
Fantastic. Yes, I had been having a little bit of trouble in the previous panel because some people seem to speak away from the microphone. But I hope in this one we will all be well behaved and loud and clear. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. In 1993, I was a student at the University of Bern. And then I realized that CERN made a historic decision. Rather than keeping the World Wide Web proprietary, it released it freely to the world. The reason was simple but profound. A global information network could only succeed if it remained open, accessible, and interoperable for everyone. Today, Europe faces, I think, a similar challenge. As digital infrastructure becomes critical to our economies, societies, and democracies, the question is no longer only how to innovate, but how to ensure that innovation remains trustworthy. Trust is not something that can be added later. It must be designed into the technologies we build from the start. This is the theme of our discussion today, trust by design. We are fortunate to be joined by experts working on it, from secure networks and its resilient access to knowledge, to trustworthy artificial intelligence and privacy-preserving digital payments, as we've heard before from Leo Schumacher. Let me begin by inviting and welcoming each of our panelists, Oleg Lavrovsky, Nicola Rustignoli, thank you, Emmanuel Engelhart, and Vordonarakis, who is the youngest and will speak about his experience with Apertus. Please. So, my first question, and I'm staying here and I'm not going there because I want also to have eye contact with Oleg. This is the reason. Please introduce yourself briefly and tell us about your work and project. Let's start with you, Emmanuel.
Press Oleg. Press the button.
Press the button.
Only one? Oleg, you
No,
properly?
Fantastic, yes.
So my name is Emmanuel Engelhart. I launched 20 years ago a project called Kiwix, which has for purpose to bring online content offline for people with difficulties to access broadband internet. And 20 years later, I'm here to talk about it.
Go on, Nicola.
All right. My name is Nicola Rustignoli, so I lead the SCION Association. We are a non-for-profit organization based in Switzerland, and we maintain the SCION protocol. So that means open source implementation, specifications, and then a lot of community.
Oleg?
Yes, hi, so I'm the technical community manager for the Swiss National AI Initiative. It's a collaboration between the two technical universities, EPFL and ETH, as well as the Swiss Supercomputing Center in Lugano. And I am based in, actually in Bern. So greetings from Bern, where we have today the Swiss IGF, Internet Governance Forum. And yeah, I would have otherwise been happy to be with you in person, but we have parallel conferences today.
Hopefully next year in Athens.
Exactly.
So, George?
Hello, hello.
I'm George Vordonarakis, difficult last name. Please excuse the Greek background. My background is in military history and security studies, and I have engaged in research regarding the impacts of AI and large language models on society and the economy. My main concern and presence here is to talk a little bit about my experience with Apertus, but also to comment on the engagement of the social sciences in the AI space.
Thank you all. So then my question to all of you is that the title of this panel is Trust by Design. What does trust mean in the context of your work, and how can be embedded into digital infrastructure from start? Nicola?
All right. So, especially when it comes to new technologies, trust by design means that you have to think about the security, but also the governance part of a technology really from early on, and possibly really bake it into the technologies. And this is really what SCION does at the networking layer when it comes to connectivity.
Thank you. Emmanuel?
So in case of Kiwix, that's a bit easier because we are not really such a big part of the infrastructure, like the replacement of network infrastructure or server solutions, this kind of thing. So the situation is easier. And for the rest of the trust, this is probably one of the biggest assets we have, like as a trademark, as a project. And what I can say is that the fact that we are dealing with only open source software and open content in general, both of them gives almost per definition a super good note in terms of trustworthiness.
Thank you. Oleg?
Well, Apertus means openness, and it's in the context of my work as a community builder, very much about opening technology projects to the users. And trust to me means not like a static concept. It's something very dynamic. It needs to be continuously maintained through ongoing efforts, basically to redress user concerns, to be an active partner, to incorporate their feedback, and of course to reflect societal values, laws, and emerging technological capabilities. And I mean, there are so many areas where an AI project like Apertus touches upon things. I'll just mention a couple of things we're working on. One is explainability, of course. We are, I think, one of the most transparent projects of our kind, with a massive amount of documentation going out. But we also have an interpretability track where we are taking specific concepts in the development of LLMs and making those, making explanations about them. The other one is around data quality and mitigating bias. We know that there's an enormous amount of problems and issues in understanding how bias comes into play. This is a massive area of concern. Things like security and privacy, putting boundaries around what people can do with LLMs and places where LLMs should push back. And of course, human in the loop. How do we involve researchers and the general public in critical decisions? How do we build feedback mechanisms into the model? One of the main areas of that is, of course, value alignment, but also things like accessibility, making sure that the system is accessible in multiple languages, that it's intuitive to people from different backgrounds and abilities. It's just a sampling of many areas. We believe that the open source approach to large language model development is definitely one of the fundamental blocks to a more trustable system.
Thank you. George, do you have a take as a user of technology?
As a user of technology, well, what I will say is that for me, trust in open source technologies and in AI broadly has to do with governance, incentives, which is something very important. It's what kind of incentives do the proprietors of AI, the developers of AI, those funding it, what incentives do they have to make these technologies interact with the public properly? and also for regulators to be intimately aware of all the ways in which these technologies interact with the public broadly, not just people who know how to use them and how to work with them, not just people in tech, but everyday people who will interact with LLMs in increasingly large ways in their daily life. How do we avoid the certain pitfalls? How do we investigate the problems that could arise from something like this? And I believe that open source and open research and an environment of discussion is the most important way in which we can explore these problems.
Thank you. Nicola, I have two questions for you. Many groundbreaking technologies remain in the research phase. What enabled SCION to move from academic research into operational development?
Thank you. So, SCION is a network technology used in critical infrastructure ecosystems, and this is notoriously very hard sector to produce innovation, because technology life cycles are very long, and typically operators of critical infrastructure are very reluctant to change things. So SCION, I think here is really a bit of a special case in the sense that the technology could really move out of ETH Zurich towards, for example, big deployments like the Swiss interbanking network. So really processing billions, hundreds of billions of francs in financial transactions thanks to SCION connectivity, and this was possible because of a few ingredients. So one of these, I think the most fundamental, was a really collaboration between a very strong research community in Switzerland and potential users. One of the most important one was, for example, the central bank, that is also the regulator when it comes to payments, and they have been looking at the resilience of the interbank network. And by looking at that, and at the same time by having research collaborations with the university, then they realized that there is some potential to use some emerging technology like SCION. And that's really how then the early trials of the finance network started. And that's really what gave SCION its initial commercial impulse. And today it's really widely deployed in that use case, and there are many more that are coming to life. Last factor I would say is also that I think in Switzerland there is a lot of attention to resilience. Why? Because I think typically there is some risk aversion, and that really helps that the regulator was really looking at even the network, which is something that typically we all forget about when we only think about the data center and so on.
Thank you. My second question to you is that Europe talks increasingly about digital sovereignty. Can digital sovereignty be achieved without investing in sovereign network infrastructure?
That ties back to what I was mentioning, that we are talking a lot about the data center, we are talking a lot about governance on who owns our supply chains and so on, but we forget the network. And the network is really a key part of any IT supply chain. There is no AI, no cloud without connectivity. And that's something that SCION tries to tackle by really giving its users visibility on which telco providers you're going through the network, by creating this federation. So I think this is really a very important piece that we need to kind of keep in mind beyond what sits in the data center and what sits on the end user side. So yes, of course.
Thank you. Emmanuel, I have also two questions for you. The first question is, what lessons can we learn from Kiwix about ensuring that knowledge becomes and remains accessible, open and independent?
So the first thing is to learn is that half of the world population does not have an access to broadband internet. That's something we tend to forget, because it's so pervasive for us. We have it everywhere, here, at home, in the train, everywhere. It's just there. But actually, even if broadband access internet moves ahead, more and more people have access to it, there is still so many of them who don't have access, and even worse, we have more and more people having access to broadband internet without having free access to broadband internet. That means internet access is censored. We talk here about a very important country like China. That's the obvious one, but also new countries like Russia, where the censorship is very severe. They don't have access to Wikipedia. So, as Kiwix, we are a kind of spin-up of the Wikipedia movement, so we are always sensitive about who has access to Wikipedia. So that was a problem. About the solution. Obviously, open source software is a technology transfer. So you don't have a first access problem like by paying. Everybody can use it, and that's an obvious thing, but that's something to say. We talk a lot about helping what we call the global south. But just making open source software is a very good thing to do it, and it's for everybody, so including the global south. The second point is the content itself. We are not only a software solution, we maintain a library of thousands of content to be available offline. Wikipedia is one of them, but we have hundreds of other content. And that's made possible in a legal and practical manner only because there is a strong, I don't like really the open content movement, but a movement to make free content and content which can be reused and downloaded freely and redistributed freely. So free content is very, very, very important for us, and it's very, very important for people having difficulties to access to knowledge.
Thank you. My second question to you is that Kiwix has shown that access to knowledge remains possible even when connectivity is limited or unavailable. Why should access to knowledge be considered a strategic component of digital resilience? Maybe this is.
Yes, that's an easy one. So everybody needs access to reference documentation, to books, to curriculum to study. Maybe the best point is just for schools, for universities, that they can just work. If they don't have access to this document, then they cannot work. Of course, this is only part of the challenge. There are also the kind of medium, or mediators, teachers, librarians, to explain, to follow the curriculum, and to get the job done on transmitting from the document, from the books, to the students. But if you don't have the reference documentation, and I would say if you don't have in a digital manner today, because today everything is digital, just something to remind. If you have the document as a book in your library, you can give it one student. But if you have the same content as a digital book using Kiwix or any other platform, then you can give it to all your students. So the digital form is very important to help to spread the knowledge. So if you want to prepare the next generation to be educated and make educated choices, then better use Kiwix and better secure their access to the content.
Thank you. Oleg, I have 3 questions for you.
Sure.
Only because I have only one for George afterwards. Artificial intelligence is becoming part of Europe's critical digital infrastructure. What role does openness play in making iSystems trustworthy?
So, Well, first of all, I think in your introductory remarks you mentioned something like Apertus is a very unique project. It's not. There are actually prior projects. For years before I joined the Apertus team, I had been using the Euro LLM model from kind of a joint venture between the various data science centers across Europe. We are connected to organizations really around the world, creating large language models. Really thousands of them are being uploaded to places like Hugging Face. This is a burgeoning industry, but it's also a place where people can find an amazing amount of creativity and inspiration, practically on every topic. So whether you're interested in health or if you're interested in education, you can find efforts to develop new systems around that, but also very, very niche things like local problems, local dialects, local data sets are also being addressed by these machine learning and large language model communities. So I just want to first point out that this is not something unique, and I think that openness is really one of the key things that can engender creativity, and at least to perceive the amount of creativity and interest there is to use this particular technology, right? Because if we stay only consumers of products and have a very personal interaction with large language models through a chat interface, we are not exposed to what other users are doing. We're not exposed to what other communities are building, right? So it's very important to at least publish, to talk about what we're doing. We have regular scientific exchanges, colloquia, and I think that's really for me the pillar of that. But of course, you mentioned on a governance level, so we're currently going through a review process with the Digital Public Goods Alliance, who are one of the organizations. There are others who are scrutinizing our work, going through the reports, downloading the code, and checking to see if the data sources that we're using are really free of legal or political issues. And of course they're not. Of course there are always things you can find, and so it's also important to have openness as a strategic instrument in order that regulation can be developed, in order that things can be assessed, and that there's in the case of Apertus, we try to represent Swiss values, right? But what is Switzerland? It's a message, it's a construct. Transparency, neutrality. These are topics we have to defend on a daily basis, right? And again, if you try to pack that into a project like Apertus, it's a constantly shifting goal, right? So I think in that sense, we have the Swiss AI initiative, which is also important to say. Apertus is one of many dozens of projects within this large, collaborative environment where we democratically govern access to this shared infrastructure, which is the supercomputing facility in Lugano, where the model gets trained or where other experiments get run. Also meteorological simulations happen, all kinds of analytical tasks get done with that system. We have tens of millions of GPU hours, and those are shared across our teams. And this, we hope that others would also understand that principle and apply it to various other kinds of infrastructure. You don't have to have the second fastest supercomputer in Europe. You can also do this on university infrastructures or federated machine learning systems at a smaller scale. So for me, that's also something like openness is like an invitation to approach problems at even from this level of home labs or amateurs or hackathons. Giving people the right to learn and to experiment with the technology. And again, if they find a way to do that creatively, expressively, inclusively, they should be able to share that with others.
Thank you. My second question is that there is often tension between powerful AI systems and transparency. How can open source AI help Europe build trust while remaining competitive globally?
Is that a question for me or for Georgios?
For you.
So, first of all, I think we need to question what AI means. And it's become a very diluted moniker for a whole bunch of things, which in many cases are not particularly artificial nor intelligent. Right? So, I've read the European Union's report. I think it was mentioned in the keynote earlier, the one that was published at the beginning of the month. And I think we should not, first of all, lose the view on the fundamentals. I've been working in the area of open data for many years and trying to understand what is really the value of these, this digital heritage, right? These resources like digital archives and statistics and engineering analytics that are some cases this is all just about duplication of effort, and in some cases, yes, it's questioning these aspects of sharing the commons. Right, like in the case of Kiwix, you definitely want people to have access to knowledge, but you also need to have some form of scarcity, because without, scarcity, it's very hard for people to see value in a particular resource, right? So there's all these variables at play, and these have already, been very much part of digitalization strategies and open source strategies. So fundamentally, we talk about open source large language models. So that's the kind of open source we're developing. An open source large language model is these model weights, these parameters, these recommendations, but it's also it doesn't work on its own. It's a component in a system which includes the frameworks to run the model, to test it, to offer it to users in the form of chats or APIs, and it's just a very advanced piece of engineering, but it doesn't mean that it's not something you could put in a box, that you could take offline, right? So I'm also quite excited, by the way, of maybe combining forces with projects like Kiwix to kind of make LLM available on smaller devices. Actually, yesterday we released Apertus 1.1, the mini version of Apertus, which runs on a Raspberry Pi, for example, right? So we're taking also steps in that direction, so things can be more portable and accessible, right?
Thank you. Thank you. I am going to George, and then I will come back to you if time allows, because I have also other questions for our participants. So George, as a new user of Apertus, what kind of differences do you notice compared to other LLMs?
So I have been using LLMs for a little while, as have all of you. I started using LLMs while I was in university in 2023, and I did not like them. I did not trust them, I did not enjoy my use of them, and I noticed two major differences when I started using Apertus. Something that always bothered me as a broader implication of the use of LLMs was the amount of flattery they engage in. They are little sycophants a lot of the time. And something that I noticed about Apertus was that, first of all, it did not want to flatter me. It wanted to be straight about what it can do, what it can't do, hedging, something that other LLMs often don't do. And that was the main positive thing that I had as a takeaway when using Apertus. And I think it made me think a little more about what the day-to-day interaction between LLMs and people broadly outside of the tech world can do to society. You've probably heard of stories with people having psychotic breaks after discussing with AIs for a long period of time. And that has to do with us not necessarily being capable of distinguishing an AI LLMs as a tool and as a potential friend, advisor, or confidant. It is vital for societies to be able to investigate very closely how millions and millions of people interact with AIs and to avoid having them damage our psyche. Just to, as a last thing, here's where I think public funding is very important, and in combination with open source approaches to LLM development, because if there isn't oversight and incentives beyond just let's maximize how many users are involved here by any means necessary, I believe that LLMs could seriously harm a lot of our social relations. So I'm very glad with my experience with Apertus I saw those guardrails being formed in real time and being implemented into the development of the LLM from the beginning, having the appropriate incentives to continue forward.
You. Since we are in Cyprus, I have for all of you a question on Cyprus. If Cyprus wanted to become a regional hub for trusted digital infrastructure and open source innovation, what would be the first practical step to do, Nicola?
I would definitely recommend having a platform framework somewhere to have collaboration between the private sector, the governmental sector, policymakers, and the academia. It definitely looks like from previous discussions that the ingredients are there, then you need to somehow mix them, but for trusted infrastructure, then the governance part of it is also very, very important.
Emmanuel?
It will be difficult to say something different. It's not very different to ask what should be the environment to help to create companies or to push entrepreneurship. It's basically the same kind of thing. You need to create the ecosystem, at least the most basic things like the places, the support, and of course an economical environment favorizing this. That means with clients or sponsor to help to bootstrap your project and move forward, because this is really the beginning, the most complex thing.
Thank you. Oleg?
So I think it's quite important to have a kind of a digital innovation office, some agency. That's something that's been topic, of course, in Switzerland, but also within each canton. We've seen this emergence over the past years of new roles like data steward. People who are really taking responsibility for these topics, addressing public concerns quite seriously. And I think it would be good for them to have a mandate and a team and some resources to run, programs. And I'm a little bit biased because we have the Swiss IGF here in Bern today. But working with the Internet Society, having that chapter involved is also a very good step towards that.
And I will have a last question. I have a lot of questions, of course. But my last question to you, because I suppose I don't have enough time, is that imagine we meet again in 2030, this is in a few years. What would success look like? What would need to have changed for Europe to say that it has truly built trust by design? Oleg, I start with you.
There's an interesting contest until the end of July. Anyone who's a writer can submit a short story for the Protopian Writing Award. It's just a little bit of an advertisement that's run through the Public AI Network. So definitely thinking about the future is great. I think it would be. I think we should. I would really think about my children, who are growing up with this technology, who are definitely thinking about AI as their companions and confidants, like George said, and maybe fulfilling new needs that are hard for the previous generations to imagine. But I'm not really an oracle. But let's write a story.
Nice. Emmanuel, what do you think?
Yes, so actually openness, transparency is core for trust. It's a cultural thing, a cultural switch, and I think at the European level it's moving in the right direction. Open data is something obvious for the moment, and now it wasn't in the past, and open source software is a key asset for sovereignty, for trust, for Europeans. So this is, I think, a fight which is going to be won. And the next step is obviously for AI, like said Oleg, and then there is still a lot to do. So let's see in 4 years.
George, do you have a take on it? Short, please, because we don't have time.
So for me, success in maybe 4 years' time looks like a movement from the mentality of move fast and break things. I don't want to break things. I would rather see people properly taking the steps to harness the productive and transformative aspects of AI that can genuinely help society, and not have this blasé attitude about, oh yeah, we're gonna just enter a development arms race with China and the United States, and if we destroy society in the meantime, that's okay, that's a different discussion. No. I think society should be right in the center of the discussion of AI, and I want to see a much greater involvement of the social sciences in open source research and in AI ethics, and that's what success looks like to me.
Thank you. Nicola, your take.
On my side, commenting more on critical infrastructure ecosystems, for me success is that in 5 years that they are built on open source, on technologies that have trust by design, and maybe that the next ECB tenders are then more open to new technologies, because we definitely have the ingredients, but today we are not really always leveraging what we have.
So, thank you very much. Do we have time for another question or not? No. If you would wish to ask our guests, please go on. We have also a social event afterwards. So, dear our guests, thank you very much. Oleg, thank you very much for I hope that we will be able to organize something next year. As Internet Society Switzerland chapter and NGIO, maybe in Athens, who knows? We will be there to welcome you. Thank you very much.